The Murder Shelf Book Club contains disturbing content related to real-life crimes. Listener discretion is advised.
Do you love the strange, the unexplained, and the downright terrifying? Horrifying History takes you on a chilling journey into the dark corners of the past, where history and horror collide. From haunted places and ghostly legends to unsolved mysteries and terrifyingly true stories, you will uncover the twisted facts that history books leave out. Who were the real monsters behind infamous legends? What dark secrets lie buried in the pages of history? Every episode, we reveal the eerie truths that will send shivers down your spine. Are you brave enough to face the darkness? Horrifying History, available now wherever you listen to your podcasts. But don't wait for too long. The past might just come looking for you. Listen if you dare.
Faced with a staggering mountain of data, Deputy Cava realized it was too much for his computer. There's no Microsoft homicide-type product designed to sort through a deluge of digital evidence. Midway through the case, I built a new machine with sufficient capacity. I ended up creating a database from scratch and writing code to input the tens of thousands of emails, texts, social media logs, etc., into a system that I could query to find correlations between accounts, dates, IP addresses, and other details. I called the system DEX. From A Tangled Web by Leslie Rule. Welcome to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast. I am your host, Jill. This is episode 141, 2ndCast, The Untangling, part 3 of the trilogy on A Tangled Web by Leslie Rule. This book is simply a masterpiece. Following all the twists and turns this story has taken has been challenging, and especially trying to figure out how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. Again, I strongly urge you to listen to parts 1 and 2, episodes 137 and 138, before this episode. There is just a lot. But first, let me thank my new murder bookies, Meatbug, Sue Kravitz, Rob Roy, Brandy, Jenny, Patricia, Gnome, MK, and Tim Carpenter. I am happy to have you aboard. We just had our October Patreon Zoom last night, discussing CrimeCon, the new Netflix movie Monster, the Ed Gein story, the upcoming books I'll be featuring, and I am teaching my serial killer class. So if you'd like to participate, join my Patreon at www.patreon.com/Murder Shelf Book Club, and it's like $2 to $4 a month. All right, in part 2, we delved into the intricate tapestry of Liz Golyar's childhood, upbringing, and tumultuous relationships, leaving us with a host of suspicions and very few clear-cut answers. Few questioned that Cari Farver was the sadistic stalker ruthlessly tormenting her victims, including Dave Krupa, his ex-girlfriend Amy, his longtime friends, as well as Cari's own mother, Nancy Rainey, and her son Maxwell. Then, a thorough electronic examination of Liz's phone illuminated the shocking reality. Liz Golyar was the true stalker, cleverly manipulating various apps to fabricate the illusion that thousands of texts, emails, videos, and photographs that were flooding her victims were from Cari. Now, this web of deception is starting to unravel, and the truth is finally coming to light. But since Liz was impersonating Cari Farver, where was the real Cari? On St. Patrick's Day 2014, Deputy Carl Reister was dispatched to Cari's former cottage 16 months after she went missing, after a possible suicide attempt by Cari was posted on the Meet Me app. At 5 a.m., the police pounded on the door of Marina Estes, who was now renting the cottage from Nancy Rainey. No, Cari wasn't here. She'd never even met Cari. Reister apologized and notified the Rainey family, which upset Nancy greatly. Was Cari alive? Did they have the wrong address? Did she need help? The uncertainty was painful, especially for Max. And later, Mother's Day became agonizing when an unknown number sent a Happy Mother's Day text to him. So spring 2014, Garrett Sloan was in the hospital for a cardiac event related to the flu. Liz did not visit, angering everyone he knew. She showed little empathy for anyone, including her pets. And Garrett was the one who often had to remind her to feed them. But there was some good news. On May 1st, Amy Flora gave birth to a baby boy named Mason. And Callista and Trey, her son and daughter, with Dave Krupa, were excited to welcome their new little brother. Liz disapproved of Amy's presence in her ex, Dave's life, which seemed irrational since they had children together. It was during Christmas 2024, when everyone was at Dave's house, where he bought gifts for his kids and 8-month-old Mason. And Mason had affectionately learned to say, "My Dave," regarding him. But things changed when Liz showed up uninvited, creating a distinct chill, angry that Amy was there. On Christmas Day, she does this. Trying to avoid a confrontation, Amy took Mason and went home. Now, Dave had moved again, giving very few people his new address in Council Bluffs. Unfortunately, he gave it to Liz, his actual stalker, who continued to stalk. Now, please understand this again. Liz is good. Many intelligent people, mostly male, and that includes law enforcement, were fooled by Liz Gullier. Her manipulations would become legend. Quote, "Some people who've read the news stories are bewildered, assuming that her crime was so obvious they could have solved it, even if they had no training in law enforcement. Well, the truth is that the Gullier case is one of the most complex and confusing crimes to ever challenge detectives. It might have gone unsolved if it were not for those who spent months painstakingly untangling and unsnarling this web. By the time the case was served up in a neat package for public consumption, the facts were so well organized that it appears far simpler than it actually was." End quote. Yeah, this is not a simple case. I have gone into a lot of details, but I still haven't told you everything because it is literally that complicated. Detective Jim Dottie had a bachelor's of science in psychology and had previously worked as a counselor at a children's group home before entering law enforcement. And now he'd be giving that psych degree a workout. In May 2015, Ryan Avis was promoted to corporal and Randall Phillips became a sergeant in the investigative unit. These three detectives dedicated extensive time to the Cari Farver missing person case. To avoid tunnel vision, Dottie worked the case as if Cari Farver were deceased. Avis worked it as if she were alive, a rather novel approach. No one had seen Cari in 30 months, and her bank account had no activity. Thus, a crucial question emerged. Who would attempt to make it look like Cari Farver was alive? Only a killer would have a motivation for such deception. According to the 2023 UN Office on Drugs and Crime report, 60% of female homicide victims are killed by intimate partners or family members. Investigators closely examined Cari's boyfriend, Dave Krupa, but eventually ruled him out. However, just 2 days after Cari's disappearance, on November 15, 2012, a supervisor at West Corporation received a text from her phone. Quote, "I won't be coming back. I'm taking a job in Kansas. Sorry for the short notice. I'm sending someone to fill the position. Her name is Shanna Gollier." End quote. Red flags popped up, as Cari Farver did not make rash decisions. She also would have known that West Corporation had a robust hiring practice, and this Shanna had no training in computer coding. Gollier had filled out an application listing Cari Farver as her reference, but she was not hired. Detectives caught wind of Liz's obsession with Dave Krupa, as both had let them download the contents of their phones. Yeah, Liz was that confident she had covered her tracks. And the photograph used in the January 2013 kidnapping, that had been taken with an LG Spectrum cell phone, the exact same type Liz owned. They would now obtain search warrants to further the investigation. Meanwhile, Nancy Rainey was heartbroken, convinced that something terrible had happened to her daughter, as the police dismissed her concerns, believing Cari was bipolar or had had a psychotic break. On May 8, 2015, Detective Dottie visited Nancy and assured her that he did not think that Cari had left on her own. Relieved, Nancy allowed him to download the data from Cari's phone, focusing on the photo of a check with Shanna Gollier's signature, which was legit. It struck Nancy as suspicious that Gollier had tried to take Cari's job and then tried to steal her furniture, confident that this connection would remain undiscovered. Detective Avis estimates that he devoted over 500 unpaid hours to the case, which strained his marriage and his family life. His suspicion was that Liz stole Cari's phone and set up social media and email accounts using variations of her name. Bleary-eyed at 2 a.m., he noticed that Liz Gollier had made phone calls to Cari Farver on November 6th and 7th, 2012, masking them by dialing 69 to block caller ID. Now, this occurred just after Liz interrupted Cari and Dave's first date. Liz also had a photograph of a black Ford Explorer, identical to Cari's missing car, labeled Christmas Eve 2012. However, this evidence wasn't enough to prove murder. They needed more. Dottie reviewed the report on Cari's recovered SUV and noticed an unidentified fingerprint had been found on a mint container. He asked crime tech Katie Patty to compare it with Shanna Elizabeth Gollier's fingerprints. Patty reported back that the prints matched, which was significant, but still not definitive. A defense attorney could argue that Dave had brought the mints into Cari's car, but still, it added to the accumulating circumstantial evidence against Gollier. Meanwhile, Liz was blissfully unaware she was being investigated. By now, Garrett had asked her to move out, but she refused as she couldn't afford it. Garrett's best friend Gabe offered to boot her out, but Garrett was worried about what Liz would do next. Dave was also fed up with Liz. On Thanksgiving 2015, they were supposed to get together, but a blizzard hit. And Amy had taken Mason to the emergency room with a respiratory infection, and Dave went with her to help drive. Liz was furious, and Dave was disgusted. Was he supposed to blow off a sick baby, sibling to his kids, and sit down and have turkey with Liz? No way. The next day, Dave woke up to find that all of his female contacts, some he barely knew, were angry with him. Evidently, he had sent them awful texts, Amy included, calling all of them whores. Well, of course, Dave hadn't sent any messages. And the texts, they didn't sound like Dave either. Dave explained that the messages came from his phone, but it wasn't him. Mortified, he realized the stalker had come into his apartment, sending texts while he slept. He felt vulnerable and exposed. And then days later, his phone stopped working. Had the stalker returned and broken it? Or had the phone just died? He didn't know. Then, on November 29th, after spending the day with his kids, he returned home and his gun was gone, although his shotgun was untouched. Terrified, he reported the theft to the Council Bluffs Police Department. How had the thief gotten in? His faulty front door lock might have failed, but curiously, only the gun had been taken, as if the thief knew where to find it. December 2nd, 2015, Detectives Avis and Dottie were dying to speak with Liz Gulliar, but they worried about scaring her off. And then Christmas came early. Liz walked into the sheriff's department to file a harassment complaint against Amy Flora. Avis and Dottie accompanied her to her home to take the report. Liz said that she and her children were living here, not mentioning Garrett Sloan at all. And then after learning Dave Krupa's gun was stolen, Liz had had an epiphany. Amy Flora was stalking and harassing her, not Cari Farver. And Liz had a phone full of incriminating texts to show them. She signed a consent form for the detectives to download her content again. To prevent incoming signals, the phone was placed in a Faraday box, which blocks signals and prevents any digital evidence from being deleted. This was invented in 1836. I know, right? By British scientist Michael Faraday. How cool is that? Special Detective Anthony Cava from the county's IT department would handle the data. Detective Avis promised Liz he would speak with Dave and Amy on Monday. If Liz had any issues over the weekend, she should contact him on his cell. And the next morning, Liz forwarded more threatening messages from Amy. Saturday, December 5th, 2015. Amy Flora was in her apartment with baby Mason while the older kids were at Dave's for the weekend. By 4 p.m., it was cold and dark in Iowa, and she was glad to be home after Christmas shopping. She put Mason down for a nap and changed into her flannel nightgown, curling up on the sofa to play a video game on her iPad. About 5 minutes away from her, at Garrett was watching TV with Liz's kids when Liz announced she was going to Walmart. Well, that was odd, but Garrett just didn't really care. Now, the Council Bluffs Big Lake Park covers 163 acres of grassy hills with old trees, 3 lakes, tennis courts, playgrounds, and hiking trails. In December at night, the park was nearly empty, except for Liz Gulliar. At 6:41 p.m., she called 911, saying she had been shot in the leg. She was bleeding and in the parking lot. The Pottawatomie County Sheriff Office was fortunately only located a minute away. Officer Dave Burns, a 10-year veteran, arrived first. He found Liz on her cell phone with 911, shot in the left thigh, and was visibly shaken. She couldn't give the details about her assailant or where she had run off to. But then she shouted, quote, "It was Amy Flora. Amy Flora shot me," end quote. Liz said she was sitting on a bench when Amy approached, saying, quote, "So you like sleeping with Dave?" end quote. and shot her. Now medics rushed Liz to the hospital while the Omaha Police Department deployed a helicopter to search for the dangerous fleeing shooter. An infrared camera managed to locate a homeless person in the park, but there were no signs of the attacker, which seemed impossible. Around 7 p.m., literally minutes after the shooting, Amy was on her sofa when the police arrived, demanding she open the door. Doing so, they confronted her with guns drawn. "Shanna Galler has been shot," said one officer. "Who?" It took Amy a moment to realize that Shanna was Liz. Concerned, she asked if Liz was all right, showing compassion in what had to be a frightening situation. When told Liz had said Amy shot her, Amy felt like ice water had crashed over her. Everyone knew that Amy hated guns, and if she weren't so frightened, she might have laughed, but instead burst into tears. However, one officer took note that the woman in a flannel nightie didn't appear to have been out shooting anyone. Amy had been home for hours, and Mason just woke up now from his nap. She let the officers search her home, hoping to end this nightmare. One of them felt the hood of Amy's car, which was ice cold. It had not been driven anywhere recently. At the hospital, Detective Matthew Coleman interviewed Liz. The bullet had passed through her thigh, missing arteries and bone. Liz told him that earlier she felt uneasy after she saw a silver car outside, because it looked like Amy's, but it had left quickly. And then Liz recounted the harassment, stalking, and threats to kill her, the arson, all that she had endured for years. She let the police search her car. Then Coleman received a call saying it didn't look like Amy Flora had anything to do with the shooting. Liz said, quote, "Well, it sounded like her," end quote. Now she called Garrett, who was shocked to learn that Liz had been shot. At Walmart? Concerned for her children, he called Peter's father, Dirk, to watch them. At the hospital, he hesitated to ask Liz if the shooting was linked to the Dave and Cari situation because she was in tears. He wondered why she was in the park alone at night. Asking him to retrieve her car and some items from home, Garrett agreed. While gathering her things, he was stunned to find his stolen Gateway laptop under Liz's bed. Well, saying nothing, he left it out for her to see when she got home. While Liz rambled an explanation that she had bought it at a pawn shop, and clearly she had been ripped off for $500. No way, Garrett thought. That is crazy, highly unlikely, and now he knew that Liz had been involved with the burglary of his apartment 2 years ago. Dave Krupa was horrified to hear that Liz had been shot. Although they broke up and he had no interest in rekindling anything, he felt he should visit her. Amy was very upset, but completely cleared in the shooting. Now, while this drama unfolded, Special Deputy Anthony Cava, the information technology supervisor, was at work. A skilled technology expert, Cava had honed his abilities with Iowa's Crimes Against Children Task Force. Driven to protect children, his work led to the arrest of numerous pedophiles due to the evidence that Cava had uncovered. His digital expertise was, quote, essential in nabbing Liz Golyer, who'd used electronics to both commit and conceal her crimes. But it was no easy task, end quote. Like Detective Ryan Avis, Anthony Cava had a family, but struggled to balance his time between them and seeking justice for Cari Farver, with his family getting the short end of the stick. Liz Golyer? She believed that she was the smartest person in the room, so clever that she handed over her phone on December 4th, unaware that deleted data could be recovered. Cava conducted a thorough data retrieval and found the motherlode of incriminating evidence. Liz had used an app called Texty to send hundreds of threatening messages to Dave from fake email accounts she created in Cari's name. Farver recovered these messages and quickly obtained a search warrant to build a case against Liz Gullier for the murder of Cari Farver. Dozens of search warrants were issued to investigate the social media accounts used by the Cari imposter, including Facebook, Google, Microsoft, MeetMe, OkCupid, Twitter, Pinger, LetterMeLater, and others. To keep this information confidential, the warrants were sealed. Genius Liz was unaware she was being investigated. She had used proxy servers and VPNs to hide her IP address. She was confident she had covered her tracks. Anthony Cava dedicated over 3,000 unpaid hours to untangle Liz's web of deception, reviewing 20,000 emails and texts across multiple addresses. Facing challenges with such vast data, there is no Microsoft homicide app. So Dave Cava built a new machine and database from scratch to handle the information, allowing him to find correlations between accounts, dates, IP addresses, and more. And he named this system DEX, short for Index, and a nod to the Dexter TV series. It would take months after that dramatic December 2015 to piece everything together. Detectives Coleman and Harris investigated the shooting by taking Liz to the park, stopping in the parking lot where her bloodstains were still visible. As they searched for shell casings with a metal detector, they hoped to recover the weapon. They noted that Liz's account of the incident changed with each telling. She claimed to have seen people on the trail and mentioned a truck was in the lot, that she saw Amy but didn't see Amy, but heard her voice, these inconsistencies obvious. The police suspected that Liz had shot herself and were now very concerned for Amy Flores' safety. After obtaining a GPS warrant on December 11th, they tracked Liz's car and noted her frequent trips through Amy's parking lot. They decided that if Liz lingered near Amy's location, officers would rush to intervene. They knew Liz was impersonating Cari Farver, but there was much more needed to prove murder. And they also knew that Liz thought she was light years ahead of law enforcement and that she had outsmarted them. And this was her Achilles heel. December 14th, Liz was invited to Deputy Dottie's office, where an X-ray lay on his desk, and he informed her that he was investigating a missing persons case. While lab results were still pending, the remains appeared to match Cari Farver. Liz was cooperative, but seemed to know nothing relevant, though she likely connected the X-ray to this revelation. And this is genius. Truth was, the X-ray had nothing to do with the case. Liz, the great manipulator, was being manipulated. Treating her as a witness, Dottie confided in Liz, quote, "I'm going to tell you some stuff that I would hope would stay in this room, okay?" End quote. They reviewed Liz's history of meeting Cari in passing at Dave's apartment. She said Cari had called her a bitch. Yet now, Liz continued suggesting that Amy Flora was the real stalker. Quote, "She was with him for 12 years, and she still goes in and out of his life all the time." End quote. Dottie suggested that if Amy was daring enough to shoot Liz, she might also have harmed Cari. While Liz seemed outwardly calm, she was likely jumping for joy inside. Dottie then revealed that they lacked sufficient evidence against Amy. But if she made any more threats regarding Cari, That would be a significant breakthrough. The trap was set. 4 days later, Liz forwarded an email from Amy that said, quote, "I shot you, Liz, to make sure Dave stayed away from you. I got rid of the gun and no one can prove it was me," end quote. Trap sprung. Liz had impersonated Amy just as she had Cari, but the authorities wanted her confession about Cari's murder, not her bogus shooting. So Officer Dottie spoke with Liz again, clarifying that the park shooting wasn't his case. He needed information on the murder of Cari Farver. Liz believed that Cari's remains were found, so now she needed to implicate Amy, so any confession had to match the actual scenario. On December 20th, she forwarded a lengthy email from Amy to Dottie. Quote, "When I met Crazy Cari, she attacked me, but I attacked her with a knife. I stabbed her 3 or 4 times in the stomach area. Then I took her out and burned her. I stuffed her body in a garbage can with crap. She was carried out to the dumpster, probably when Dave took my garbage out for me. Dave will always take care of me and protect me, so I'll never go to jail. When I followed you that night, I shot you, and I left Mason home because he was sleeping. Made sure I called Dave and texted him for my alibi, so you can never prove it was me," end quote. 30 minutes later, another email arrived. Amy now confessed to the arson of Liz's house too, claiming Dave would never believe it had been her, and she and Dave still had sex. For a master criminal, this woman is really an idiot. It is ridiculous to think that Amy would send a confession to Liz. They were nemesists. If Amy were the killer, that would just be foolish. Additionally, her confession coming right after the police spoke to Liz about needing more evidence was just too coincidental. Now, think back to the death of shaken baby Cody, Liz's son. The prosecutor encouraged Shanna to read letters that were likely forged that incriminated the father, and they were probably forged by Liz. If Liz got away with that, she probably believed that she could do it again. And this, in my mind, parallels Pam Hupp, who allegedly murdered Betsy Faria and deceived the police into arresting her innocent husband, Russ Faria, a fact later proven. Well, December 21st was Liberation Day for Garrett. Liz finally moved out. In desperation, he had rented a U-Haul for her belongings and covered the deposit and the first month's rent for her new apartment. And he warned her, quote, "If it doesn't work out, don't come back," end quote. Ever the drama queen, Liz claimed she was being kicked out. She found an apartment in tiny Persia, Iowa, about 35 minutes from Council Bluffs, where Dave lived. By early January 2016, she was settled in and Garrett was free. In the following weeks, Liz forwarded more incriminating emails to Detective Dottie, frustrated by the slow pace of Amy's arrest. I mean, what more did this guy want? Now detectives were really pulling Liz's strings, and they would involve Dave Krupa to heighten the drama. They needed more details about the murder, how it had taken place, and where. They knew that the thought of Dave and Amy together again would drive Liz crazy. Again pretending to confide in Liz, Detective Dottie asked her not to reveal that Amy was a murder suspect. Showing more restraint than I suspected Liz possessed, she managed not to tell this to Dave until late January. Now he called detectives very confused. Detective Avis told him that Liz was very dangerous and stressed that as a family man, he'd want to protect his kids and their mother. But Liz was telling Dave that Amy shot her and killed Cari. He didn't know what to think. To Dave, the idea that Amy could hurt someone was absurd, and he'd known Amy far longer than Liz. He knew that Liz was the insecure one, deserving of sympathy given her small stature and fear of Cari's intimidation. What Dave failed to realize, he is a victim of confirmation bias. This is a common tendency in which people notice and prioritize evidence that supports their existing beliefs. This cognitive process leads us to selectively gather information that aligns with what we already think, often unconsciously shaping our worldview. And intelligence has nothing to do with this. This is exploited by cult leaders to keep their followers drinking the Kool-Aid. Once we form expectations about a person based on our initial interactions, we unconsciously seek information that reinforces those beliefs. And that was exactly what Dave did beginning in November 2012, when hostile texts came from Cari's phone. He believed every message and that Cari was stalking him. And Liz supported this belief, portraying herself as a victim due to Dave's connection to Cari. Over 3 years, it had become increasingly difficult for Dave to see the truth. Dave was at work when Detective Dottie and a marshal arrived to have a talk. They told him that Liz was behind the threats and likely involved in Cari's disappearance, warning him that Amy and his kids could be in danger. Feeling numb with disbelief, Dave recalled how he thought Cari was the stalker, especially since he and Liz received texts and emails at the same time. He was unaware of the Letter Me Later app, and he painfully understood how deeply he had been deceived. When Dave told Amy what the police had said, she was furious, insisting, "I told you so." He had mistaken her anger for jealousy and had not heeded Amy's warnings. Concerned for his family's safety, Dave moved back in with Amy. Yes, the detectives were manipulating Dave, but for very good reason, because Liz Gullier was a grave danger. February 1st, 2016, an enraged Liz called Dottie, explaining that Amy had harassed her, shot her, and killed Cari, and now she had Dave back too? Dottie sympathized, but noted that they lacked enough evidence to arrest Amy, who wasn't speaking to police. Frustrated, Liz now decided that she would make Amy talk. She wrote a manifesto about Cari Farver's murder and granted Dottie access to her Google Drive to avoid having to forward all Amy's terrible emails. Soon, he found more confession emails from Amy, including details about Cari's yin-yang tattoo. After scouring the internet, Anthony Cava confirmed Cari having a yin and yang tattoo, but this was not publicly known, and there was no innocent way of learning this information. Only someone in close contact with Cari would know this. Liz also had described Cari's apartment. Terrifyingly, the details matched investigation photos. In her SUV, Cari Farver had been stabbed in the chest or stomach. Her body had then been burned and disposed of, and the car cleaned afterward. The killer posed as Cari, contacted her mother, and took possessions from her cottage. The police determined the murder likely occurred in Omaha, under the jurisdiction of Douglas County, Nebraska. Deputy Cava, along with detectives Avis and Dottie, met with Detective Dave Schneider from Omaha's homicide unit. After the briefing, Schneider was impressed with the case that they had developed, and it was time for Katie Pattee to re-examine Cari's Explorer to verify a violent stabbing had taken place. And fortunately, the SUV's new owners graciously allowed access. On February 18th, the seats were removed, revealing a large red stain on the foam. After spraying it with Blue Star, more blood evidence appeared, indicating someone had bled heavily in the car. Search warrants were issued, and the Explorer was towed to the police garage. Needing Cari's DNA for comparison, Nancy Rainey went to retrieve a hairbrush from Cari's things that they had put into storage. Nancy and Maxwell also had their cheeks swabbed, and the samples were sent to Iowa's Division of Criminal Investigation for testing. 3 weeks after Dave had moved in, on February 21st, Liz was arrested for throwing a large rock through Amy's window in broad daylight. She was so unhinged over this, she had not waited till dark. Liz pled guilty, was fined, and released. She was escalating, which deeply worried the investigators. 4 days later, a search warrant was granted for Liz's apartment. Garrett's past relationship with Liz now complicated matters, as he worked for the Potawatomi IT under his boss, Anthony Cava. Although many trusted Garrett, it was unclear how much influence Liz had over him, and he was placed on administrative leave, leaving him baffled. He was assured he had done nothing wrong, and after learning the truth, Garrett affirmed that he would never betray the investigators, though he understood their precautions. While Liz was at work, investigators executed a search warrant of her apartment and Garrett's home. When Garrett learned that the search of his belongings was tied to a murder case, he was happy to endure this humiliation. They found nothing at Garrett's, but at Liz's place, they confiscated her electronic devices, including a cell phone and camcorder that had belonged to Cari Farver. Liz thought she had deleted Cari's videos, but one from April 2012 with Cari on it was found. One of Liz's cell phones had called Cari's mother on April 17, 2013. The same day, a man claiming to be Dave Krupa told Nancy that Cari was at the Sienna Francis house. It seemed that Liz was using a voice modulator, and Nancy had spoken with her directly. Additionally, they discovered that Liz had catfished an Omaha woman named Sandra, posing as a man and exchanging I love yous and explicit photos. Sandra had been devastated when the man she loved just disappeared, and Detective Avis considered telling Sandra the truth about Liz's deception, but feared it would only hurt her more. Ironically, Liz had chosen a man whose computer IP address was linked to the Potts County computer system, providing investigators access to a long record of activity, as she had also, cheapskate she was, used Garrett's internet and Wi-Fi. Anthony Cava could track her online actions, connecting them to the impersonations of Cari and Amy. Strong evidence that would trap her in her own web of lies and deceit. Detective Dave Schneider was eager to interrogate Liz, who was arrested at work for a traffic citation. She adopted a defensive posture, was Mirandized, and was sure that she could talk herself out of any trouble. Schneider asked her if she knew Cari Farver. Well, not really. They had met briefly at Dave Krupa's. He was seeing Cari at the time. Initially, Liz denied ever calling Cari, but later hedged that she may have. Asked about Cari's current whereabouts, Liz expressed confusion, and she launched into her Cari is the stalker story. Had Liz ever been in Cari's car? No, Liz denied it. What did she think had happened to Cari Farver? Giving a huge, exaggerated shrug, a long silence followed. Finally, Liz spoke rapidly, saying, quote, I don't know. I don't know if what Amy was saying is true. I'm more concerned that something is going to happen to me, end quote. Schneider then asked her to elaborate, quote, because the emails she sent me, they're pretty graphic, end quote. It was time to reveal the evidence that had been collected over the months to Liz, who wiped tears from her eyes. They processed crime scenes and gathered digital forensics, including cell phone records. Cell phone towers can be used to triangulate a subject's location. Why was Cari's phone at Liz's house when she had never been there? Why was Liz's fingerprint found in Cari's SUV? And why did emails from Cari's fictitious account come from Liz's IP address? The evidence of Liz impersonating Cari and Amy was compelling, especially in terms of writing style. When Liz's phone was downloaded, deleted data showed a picture of Cari's Ford Explorer, and the IP address of emails from Amy Flora traced back to Liz. As the questioning continued, Liz grew increasingly agitated, denying everything, and she demanded an attorney. And with that, Liz was released. Reviewing Cari's debit card transactions from November 2012 revealed an odd purchase at Walmart: winter clothing, cleaning supplies, and a black and white flower shower curtain, which coincidentally matched one Liz had posted in photos of her bathroom. Then the DNA results from Cari's SUV came back. There was a 1 in 288 trillion chance that the blood on the seat belonged to anyone but Cari, suggesting she had been attacked and bled profusely in the car. Phone pings indicated the attack had happened in Omaha, but the exact location remained unclear, with no witnesses, no murder weapon, or a body. Prosecuting this case would require someone fearless and innovative. That prosecutor was Brenda Beadle, known for her compassion and brilliance, who teamed up with the organized and methodical Jim Masteller for their first case together. Alongside a dedicated law enforcement team, they were determined to get justice for Cari Farver. Investigations into Cari's disappearance revealed she may have been intercepted at Dave's apartment, where Liz, who had a key, could have entered while Cari was in the shower. Being kind-hearted, Cari would not have seen Liz Gollier as a threat. Liz's online activities not only helped track her movements, but also hinted at premeditation. Though the case seemed straightforward to Detective Avis, he questioned whether others would believe such an outrageous story. Anthony Cava's evidence was damning, exposing Liz as the stalker. Blood in the SUV, Cari's items in Liz's apartment, and confession emails seemed to strengthen the case. And released from the traffic arrest, Liz's visits through Amy's apartment lot were increasing, revealing her growing unstable rage. December 22nd, 2016. They now had an arrest warrant for Shanna Elizabeth Gollier for the murder of Cari Farver. Yes. This prompted Cava and Avis to begin surveillance of Liz's place. Members of the Harrison County Sheriff Department arrived and knocked as a sleepy-eyed Liz opened the door, showing no surprise as they handcuffed her. Now Liz wanted Omaha's best defense attorney, James Martin Davis, known as JMD, and she assured him that her cleaning business was profitable and she was expecting a large tax return. Run, JMD, run. I'm warning you now, run. But he didn't run, and he later laughed, admitting that Shanna Elizabeth Gollier had stiffed him. The judge set her bail at $5 million, a rarity for murder defendants, suggesting the judge found the evidence against Gollier weak. But fortunately, Liz had no wealthy friends to help her with the bail. January 18th, 2017 was her preliminary hearing before Judge Craig McDermott. After 4 hours of detailed, flowing explanation from Masteller, Judge McDermott ruled that Shanna Elizabeth Gollier would stand trial for first-degree murder. At her arraignment a week later, the media was present with news cameras in the hallway. Clad in an orange jumpsuit, Liz waived her right to a jury trial before District Court Judge Timothy P. Burns, which surprised me. JMD had only to confound one juror to get Liz off because this is really complicated stuff. But okay. The trial was set for May 10th, 2017, just 4 months away. The prosecution understood JMD's strategy. Delaying the trial could lead to new evidence or even the discovery of a body, and prosecutors Beadle and Masteller were concerned about winning this case without one. Now, IT specialist Anthony Cava and Corporal Ryan Avis were dedicated to trial preparation when Cava's vision gave him some problems. An MRI revealed a tumor near his brainstem, which controls essential autonomic functions necessary to life, like breathing. Despite starting radiation treatments and dealing with headaches, Cava remained focused on Liz's case, prioritizing justice for Cari Farver over his own health. He refused surgery until after the trial, worried it might impact his memory and concentration. He also stopped in to see Dave Krupa, just to make sure they had all the electronic devices. Well, Dave told him he had a tablet of Liz's in a storage box and that he would drop it off. Finding the tablet, Dave did drop it off, handing it over to Anthony Cava, who quickly recovered several erased images from the SD card. Among them were photos from Liz's phone, including images of her children and one close-up of a tattoo on a foot, the Chinese character for mother. Now detectives spoke with Nancy Rainey, seeing if she had any photos of Cari's feet. Providing them, the tattoo in the photo on Liz's tablet matched the one she had of Cari's foot, a sentimental tattoo that Cari had gotten for her mom and her cherished role as Max's mom. Oh my God. Why had Liz taken such a photo, and how? Forensic pathologist Dr. Michelle Eliff examined the photo and concluded it showed the tattoo on a decomposing foot. Oh my God, so this was a grim souvenir of the deceased Cari taken by her killer, and this tied Liz to Cari's dead body. On May 10th, 2017, the trial began with an additional charge of second-degree arson. Detective Avis sat with the prosecution, ready to pull up any file or photograph they needed. Keep in mind, Liz had sent over 20,000 texts and emails. Cari's family and friends, including Amber Jones, packed Judge Burns' courtroom. Local reporters competed with organizations like NBC's Dateline for a seat. Defense attorney JMD had opted for a bench trial because the acts Liz was accused of committing were exceptionally cruel, and a judge is trained to focus on the evidence rather than emotions and would approach the evidence fairly. Brenda Beadle opened explaining that Liz was obsessed with Dave Krupa, and her fixation drove her behavior. Key evidence, such as blood in the car, imposter emails referencing stabbing, and a fingerprint on the mint container, all pointed to how Cari had died at Liz's hands. The photo of the decaying foot tattoo, identical to Cari's, was found on Liz's phone, was highlighted, and Brenda clearly outlined the harassment of innocent individuals, delivering a thorough explanation in over an hour, and this prosecutor did good. JMD pointed out that Liz wasn't winning any Citizen of the Year awards, but she hadn't committed murder. Was there even a death? Where had the alleged homicide even taken place? Was it even in Nebraska? Who knew? No one. Now, Liz had a new boyfriend, 22-year-old Josh Stemmer, who strongly believed in her innocence. And during recorded jail calls, Liz was heard issuing orders that young Josh diligently followed. She deceived this young man, just like a number of law enforcement officers who had to uncomfortably testify to this fact. Many had dismissed Nancy Rainey's concerns and were now owning their mistakes. Firefighters, arson investigators, CSI, detectives, and Cari's co-workers testified, and evidence included the black and white shower curtain purchased with Cari's debit card and the photo of the same one linked to Liz's phone. Nancy Rainey and grandson Maxwell testified about the anguish caused by the killer's taunts. JMD hammered that no remains were found and questioned the significance of Cari's blood on the passenger seat. He argued it could have been from her menstrual cycle, as there wasn't enough blood to indicate exsanguination. Nancy Rainey countered that Cari had had a hysterectomy in March 2012. Snap! JMD also called into question Liz's knowledge of Cari's yin and yang tattoo, suggesting that Dave Krupa may have mentioned it to her. Now, would a man share details about another woman with a jealous Liz? I'm sorry, JMD. No way did that happen. Now, the fingerprint on the mint container was important. Cari Farver liked that brand, which matched that which Deputy Phillips had found in her desk drawer. However, there was no evidence to support the claim that Liz put the container in Cari's car. Well, that is true, but the state argued that Liz must have touched the mints while cleaning her prints off of the car, as no other prints were found in the vehicle. The January 2013 kidnapping hoax was presented by the state, showing that Liz duct taped herself, got in the trunk, and used a timer on her phone to take photos of herself, rejecting a few images which were shown to the judge. Liz had sent the best one to Dave via Cari's phone. JMD acknowledged that this was a bizarre game, but it didn't prove murder, and Liz was not on trial for stalking. All right, I would have hit her with the stalking charge. Well, anyway, further, the confessions Liz had sent while impersonating Amy were just fantasies, not an admission of committing murder. Garrett's testimony revealed that Liz had lied to JMD. They had been in a 5-year-long, supposedly monogamous relationship, but Garrett had been unaware of the stalking and harassment. When he received texts from someone named Cari, he'd told Liz, who claimed that Cari was an old friend. JMD was caught unprepared. Liz had insisted that their relationship was just in Garrett's imagination, and JMD had aimed to portray Garrett as delusional, but Garrett remained resolute. During his testimony, Liz slipped a piece of paper to JDM, suggesting that they may have had sex more than she admitted. It's unclear why Liz chose to lie about this, but it certainly didn't help her case. Garrett also, significantly, supported the prosecution's theory that Cari's body had been burned after finding photos of burned tarps concealing something which seemed to be a body among Liz's deleted images. In his January 2013 interview, Garrett noted smelling something burning at Liz's house in the fall or winter of 2012, around the time Cari went missing, which matched up with the Amy confession about Cari's body being burned. And this was long before the arson fire at Liz's in August 2013. Dave Krupa was sworn in, having finally come to terms with the fact that Liz, whom he had felt protective of, was the perpetrator, not the victim. He summarized their on and off relationship, noting her pressure for commitment while he backed off. He also mentioned the terrible emails and texts that he had received. When JMD asked about how they met, he said it was through Plenty of Fish, and confirmed that he had chatted with other women who had not been harassed. Amy Flora testified next and seemed more anxious than Dave. Prosecutor Masteller asked her about her internet service provider and email and asked whether she used a VPN. Amy had no idea what he was talking about and was completely unfamiliar with all of that stuff. She didn't recognize SurfEasy or Hotspot Shield either. Clearly, she had not sent the confession emails, which she had to read aloud in front of Cari's family. It was hard on the family, but this left them in tears. Quote, "When I killed Cari, You know, she begged me to call Dave at work, and she begged me to let her talk to her family before she died, end quote. Then the star witness, Anthony Cava, was sworn in. Liz Golyer's covert internet activities were complex, but Cava was ready. He created a PowerPoint presentation outlining the rudimentaries of the cyber world. Over 3 days of testimony, he revealed the extent of Liz's crimes, including sending the fake emails as Cari, using proxy servers to obscure her location. He recovered deleted evidence from Liz's phone, including images she thought were gone. Significantly, he showed that someone logged into Cari's Facebook around 6:42 a.m. from Dave's apartment, with another login at 9:43 a.m. when Dave was unfriended. This was after she had attacked and killed Cari. Pings from Cari's phone, unauthorized use of her debit card at Walmart, and suspicious Facebook posts all pointed to this happening in Omaha. Cava examined Liz's creation of fake Facebook profiles for Sam Carter and Amber Mildo to lure Cari into a trap, indicating premeditation. Liz had used the Amber Mildo persona previously in online deceptions, and she had sent a friend request to Cari's son Max, too. Omaha forensic pathologist Dr. Michelle Eliff testified about the photo of Cari's foot and tattoo. The dorsum, or the upper part of the foot, showed signs of decomposition, with visible blood vessels branching out towards the toes, and the tattoo was clear. Although JMD objected, claiming it was only Dr. Eliff's opinion about decay, the objection was overruled. It was clear that Liz had taken a trophy photo of her victim's foot, later deleting it, never expecting to see it again. In her closing statements, among other conclusions, prosecutor Masteller claimed that the black and white shower curtain, bought with Cari's card, had become Liz's personal souvenir, as she took it with her each time she moved, knowing she had gotten away with murder. On the other hand, JMD highlighted that the case was entirely circumstantial, pointing out that Liz and Dave were on a break, according to their emails. And was Dave even worth killing over? Why had Liz not attacked or killed other women that Dave had dated? Why just Cari? He said the prosecution's claims were tenuous, with many unanswered questions. Well, I think I can answer one. Why didn't she harass other women that Dave was dating? Well, he was dating so many women that Liz couldn't keep up. And none had so quickly begun staying over at Dave's place, given that Cari only worked 3 blocks away. So she, Cari, was the real threat. Prosecutor Brenda Beadle had the last word, emphasizing that Liz had portrayed Cari as the jealous stalker, but it was Liz Golyer who was the jealous stalker, and she was guilty. The true Cari Farver was a bright, hardworking mother, daughter, and friend whose life had been cut short. May 24th, Judge Timothy Burns delivered the verdict. Quote, Cari Farver had not voluntarily disappeared off the face of the earth. Very sadly, she was murdered. The court finds beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant intentionally killed Cari Farver with deliberate and premeditated malice on or about November 13, 2012, in Douglas County, Nebraska. The court further finds that during the defendant's twisted plot of lies, deceit, and impersonations through digital messaging, the defendant, on or about August 16, 2013, intentionally caused damage to her residence and property by intentionally starting a fire. Liz Golyer stood there listening, her expression a placid lake on a breezeless day. Her only sign of distress was the scarlet hue creeping up her neck. End quote. Cari's friends and family, Nancy, Mark, Amber, cried with relief mixed with sadness. The verdict was what they had prayed for. It did not bring Cari home, but the judge saw the monster responsible, allowing their healing to begin. Nancy Rainey told reporter Laura Ann Robinson of KETV Newswatch that she, quote, was glad it was over with. She can't hurt anybody else anymore, end quote. In a 2020 interview with ABC, Nancy Rainey said she wanted her daughter to be remembered as, quote, the fun-loving, talented, smart woman that she was. Cari was only 37 when she died, and if I could talk to Cari right now, I'd say, I love you, and I'm glad that you are in my life. You have a beautiful son who's got a wonderful life coming, and I miss you terribly, end quote. Speaking to TV cameras, JMD said that this was, quote, one of the most powerful presentations of circumstantial evidence that I have ever seen, end quote. He had done all he could, but the truth won out. A few days later, Shanna Elizabeth Gollier contacted JMD to say she wanted to take a plea deal, though there had been no formal plea offer. The prosecutor had made clear that any pleas rested on Shanna Elizabeth revealing the locations of Cari's remains, and Liz had insisted she was innocent. And now it was too late. She'd already been convicted. Gee, not quite that criminal mastermind, are ya there, huh? Shanna Elizabeth Gollier was sentenced to life in prison for first-degree murder, plus 18 to 20 years for arson, with the sentences running consecutively. She is currently at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women. Liz Gollier is a sociopath. While there is some nature mixed in her gene pool, the environment she lived with from the age of 3 onward had left its scars. She burned her house down with her pets inside, never expressing a tear, never feeling grief, all the while keeping up this emotionally devastating charade in pursuit of a man who would never be hers. It is truly diabolical. She obsesses and fixates on her victims, whether Dave Krupa, Amy Flora, Nancy Rainey, or Melissa Strong. A man like Garrett, who did care for her, Liz used and abused and took for granted. She experienced no guilt, no remorse. This woman had even burned her own pets to death, so it didn't surprise me that she'd burned Cari's remains. She channeled her rage through the Cari identity, appearing vulnerable and a victim, which kept Dave on the hook, engaged with her, as she used his guilt for bringing crazy Cari into their lives to manipulate him. Charming, funny, Liz could be fun, yet her dark side took control, and society is lucky that she will live out her days in prison. In February 2024, Dave told People magazine that he still feels somewhat responsible for Cari's death, which is very unfortunate. Quote, I'm very sorry for what happened. If I hadn't met Cari, she wouldn't have met Liz, and all this wouldn't have happened. If I'd known that the choice was this craziness or telling Cari I'm not interested, I would have told Cari I'm not interested. But you don't get that choice, end quote. Dave is living in Nebraska with his girlfriend Margie, who says he still has scars from the trauma Liz inflicted. He stringently protects his email and phone number, but he no longer has to look over his shoulder. A few weeks after sentencing, Detectives Dottie and Avis responded to a noisy domestic disturbance call at the Stemmers' residence, the home of Liz's 22-year-old boyfriend Josh. His father, Henry Stemmer, was drunk, sitting on the porch and making snide remarks about the police to Dottie and Avis as they were leaving. Dottie turned and said, quote, tell your son to pick better ladies. What? Henry asked. What do you mean? Liz Gollier. I put her in prison, end quote. Henry was quickly up, stumbling out of his chair and down the steps, calling, quote, Deputy, wait, Deputy, I want to shake your hand, end quote. During a visit to the prison for a different case, Omaha's Detective Dave Schneider was informed that Liz was pretending to be insane and insisted on being called Cari. She had filed an appeal to have her conviction overturned because her attorney made a critical error by insisting on a bench trial. And there was no body, no witnesses, no murder weapon. In November 2018, the Nebraska Supreme Court unanimously ruled against her, concluding that JMD was competent. He was the best defense attorney the last 9 years. She picked him. Anthony Cava is alive and well. Retired, he has a technology webpage specializing in cybersecurity, online safety, and hacking. Shocker, right? The Cari Farver Memorial Scholarship is available to IT students at Iowa Western Community College, and there are details about this on my blog. Childhood sweethearts, Max Farver and Sarah met when they were in kindergarten. Max would propose in January 2018, and Sarah wrote on their wedding registry, quote, "After dating all through high school, it was pretty expected that someday he would pop the question. I know some people from our high school were betting on how long it would take. Sorry to those who expected it right after graduation," end quote. Due to COVID, he and his bride had a small wedding at home in June 2020, both looking handsome, beautiful, and beaming with happiness. And in May 2023, a daughter was born to Max and Sarah, making Cari Farver a grandma, and I believe she smiles down upon her family. And that concludes the most convoluted, confusing case I have ever covered. I did my best, but I assure you, I did have to leave some things out. So be sure to add Leslie Rule's book, A Tangled Web, to your birthday, Christmas, or Hanukkah list. My interview with Leslie Rule will drop later this year, so we are not done with the story yet. Meanwhile, my Patreon murder bookies have chosen our next book, I Survived, by Victoria Cilliers. Set in the UK, it follows Victoria, a physiotherapist, or for Americans, physical therapist, who fell in love with a soldier, Emil Cilliers. They were married and had 2 children together. But then tragedy struck on Easter 2015 when Victoria's parachute failed to open and she fell 4,000 feet, suffering life-threatening injuries. Miraculously, she survived, but soon the police discovered her parachutes had been tampered with, and I look forward to sharing this true crime story with you. Thank you for listening. I see you as you hear me. As you enjoy pumpkin spice, football, and falling leaves, share my podcast with friends and family, and leave an awesome review after listening. I appreciate you being on this journey with me into the cases, the updates, and the analysis on the best true crime books out there. Read with me, or let me read for you. Share your thoughts with me at jill@murdershelfbookclub.com, on X, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, or join Patreon for $2 to $4 a month and help me select the next books I'll feature, plus my serial killer class, and we have some doozies coming up this fall. Written and produced by Jill, all rights reserved. Music, The Pewter Elephant by Blue Dot Sessions.